Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Titleist has given us a very early peek at a new mini driver and brought it out to the PGA Tour for the very first time at the Sentry, which is going to be played on the Plantation course once again at the Kapalua Resort in Hawaii. And we've got our first looks officially at the GT280. Now, the GT280 looks very, very similar to a prototype mini driver that made its way around the PGA Tour last year, starting at the Players Championship, that I had an opportunity to take some video of in hand at the event in Charlotte, the Wells Fargo Championship. So I think I've got a little bit of insight that I can give you that maybe other people aren't going to be able to give. So let's take a look at some of the photographs and find out what we know and what we don't know about the GT280 from Titleist. Okay, so this first image right here is going to tell us a lot about the GT280. First and foremost, we can see that there are two adjustable weights that are going to be positioned in the sole, one in the very back and one in the front. And whenever we have seen this type of configuration before, for example, like in the 4 Series drivers from Titleist, the GT4, before that the TSR4, etc., we're talking about a club that is going to have adjustability in terms of the center of gravity that allows you to increase or decrease both the spin rate and the launch angle. It's typically something for more accomplished players, better players who bring a lot of speed and who can create a lot of spin, because when you move more weight to the front, for example, if these two weights are not equal, if you've got a heavy weight and a light weight, which I would presume we probably have here, if you put the heavy weight up in the front, you're going to be decreasing the launch angle, decreasing the spin rate, and probably increasing the ball speed slightly, which could be something that could be really advantageous off the tee. If you put that heavier weight in the back, you're going to be creating a condition where the MOI increases, the stability increases, you're going to be increasing backspin slightly, and probably creating a higher launch angle. So we've got up and down adjustability, we would think, within the GT280. We can also see that there is an adjustable hosel mechanism. Now, the SureFit adjustable hosel mechanism that comes standard on most Titleist woods, certainly the drivers as well as fairway woods in the past, have allowed players and fitters to independently change both the loft as well as the lie angle. The loft can go up by as much as about 1.5 degrees. It can go down by as much as 3/4 degree. So 13 degrees of stated loft, which you can see right here, can probably go down to about 12.25, 12.25 degrees. And I'm guessing that this club at 13 degrees of loft can also play with a loft as much as, say, 14.5 or so. So we've got some adjustability in terms of loft. We've got some adjustability with the spin rates, as well as the trajectory. A lot of adjustability at the very top end of the bag. Again, remember, a mini driver is meant to be something that goes farther than a traditional 3 would, but not quite as far as a traditional driver. So having the adjustability features cooked into this club are going to be critical, because it has to fit into a certain distance gap. Otherwise, it's just simply not going to make sense. And that's going to lead me also to talking a little bit about the name, because I think the name GT280 is rather telling. Obviously, we had the GT drivers and fairway woods that came out in 2024. I was at the Memorial Tournament in Dublin, Ohio last spring, early summer, when they made their PGA Tour debut, and I provided you with some video on that. Those clubs came out to retail the end of the summer 2024. So this makes sense. We know that this is going to be related to the GT woods that are already out there, but it's the 280 part that's really kind of telling. You see, most manufacturers that have a mini driver create it with a volume that's going to be smaller than a traditional driver, 460 cc's, but bigger than a 3 would, because it has to fit sort of right into that niche. It needs to be something that's not going to go as far as a driver, but it's going to be longer than a traditional 3 wood. Well, Titleist's 3 woods, if we talk about GT2, there's a 13.5 degree GT2 that's available right now that is at 200 cc's in volume. Now the GT3 at 15 degrees, which is the strongest lofted GT3 3 wood that's out there at retail, that one's going to be about 177 cc's in volume. So we're talking respectively here about 40% larger than the strongest lofted GT2, and probably around 50 to 52% bigger than the strongest lofted GT3. That would make perfect sense. So 280, I'm guessing, relates to the volume of this club, GT obviously being the family of woods. So that would give us the name and what exactly we're talking about here. Okay, so now transitioning to this image, we are getting obviously a driver on the left, and what I'm presuming is going to be the GT280 on the right. And this gives us, again, a reference for size. You can see that the The driver on the left, which I'm presuming is a GT2, is going to be significantly larger, not just in terms of blade length, but also from front to back. But the GT280 has got some heft to it. I mean, it's pretty large. But again, when you go from 460cc to what I'm presuming and guessing is going to be 280cc, it's a pretty significant drop down. But I would assume that with this glossy top, both of them have a very glossy crown, very clean look. You can see more of the loft, obviously, on the fairway wood. If that is set in the neutral position, and we're talking about 13 degrees of loft, you're going to see visually that loft. You're going to see the leading edge much more clearly than you would the driver on the left, which is obviously going to have a more vertical face. It's not going to have as much loft. But it gives you a reference as far as what, when you look down at the ball, how much of a difference you're going to have going from a traditional driver to a mini driver. But then when we transition into here, I think this is also a critical factor. This image shows the driver sort of in the background on the right, the mini driver, the GT280, in the foreground on the left. And you can see that the face height is really significant with the GT280. And that sort of gets me to one of the reasons, or one of the questions I think a lot of people have is, what do you actually do with a mini driver? Who is it for? Mini drivers are going to be used primarily off the tee as an alternative driving club. And I think when you get into something like that, the face height makes it such that more accomplished golfers who have a lot of speed don't really fear or don't have any trouble getting the ball up in the air easily with strong lofted fairway woods. They can get a 3-wood up in the air, no problem at all. But they're going to be using that club almost exclusively off of the tee, because if you're a really strong player, if you're an elite collegiate player, if you are a professional, obviously, if you're somebody who is genuinely contending in the A flight at your club championship, then for you, there probably are very few par 5s where you're going to need to hit 3-wood into a par 5 or 3-wood into a long par 4. It just simply doesn't happen. So if that's the case, your 3-wood really is an alternative driving club. By going with a taller face and going with a larger volume, you're getting more driver-like performance. You're getting more forgiveness. And again, remember, we've got this adjustable hosel mechanism. We've got the movable weights or the swappable weights forward and back. You're going to really be able to dial this into a very specific distance. It's probably going to be somewhere around 15 to 20 yards shorter than what your driver distance is going to be. And because you know you're really not going to be hitting it off of the fairway if you're that type of player, then you might as well go with something that is going to be like a miniature driver. It makes a lot of sense. So is it something that can be played off the deck? Yes, I'm sure accomplished players would be able to play this. But if you give them 10 rounds of golf, they might hit the GT280 off the fairway once, maybe twice, but they could go with it off the tee several times. The other thing I think that's really noticeable, or that really comes up when I talk to players about this, is that turning over a driver, hitting a draw with your driver, can be really challenging for a lot of players. Or if they're somebody who looks to try and move their driver both ways, it can be really challenging. A mini driver with a smaller face would most likely help players to hit different types of shots more easily than they could with their driver. And that, for some players, has been one of the big appeals to going with a mini driver. Players, for example, like Cameron Young, Max Homa, some others, use the mini driver when they know they want to hit a draw, if they're primarily a fader off the tee with their driver. And being able to turn that with a little bit more distance than they would with their 3-wood can be really advantageous. So that's another reason why a player might go with a mini driver instead of simply using a stronger lofted 3-wood. They're going to get a little bit more forgiveness. It's going to be able to turn the ball to create a draw a little bit more easily for some players. And it's something with all this adjustability, they're going to be able to dial it in. But again, that really tall face is going to give driver-like performance, and it's going to be really good off the tee. So based on just a few photographs, that's what I think the GT280 from Titleist, the new mini driver that's just hitting the PGA Tour, that's what I think that this club is going to be about. I would suspect that we're talking about 280cc in volume. It looks like we've got movable weights for up and down as well as spin adjustability. We can see the adjustable hosel, which should also allow players and fitters to change the loft as well as the lie angle. And I would think from a construction standpoint and from a usage standpoint, this is primarily going to be a golf club for elite players, faster swinging players who are looking for an alternative off the tee. Maybe they use this off the deck. Maybe this is something that they're going to be playing off of the fairway, but this is an alternative driving club that I would suspect later in the spring or at some point when Titleist brings it out, they're going to be talking to more advanced, lower handicap players who are probably very analytically minded, who are going to be wanting an alternative to their driver. I think that's what GT280 is going to be all about. When we do get more official information, when there is more information that I can share with you from Titleist, I will definitely do it here on my channel. So make sure if you got some good information out of this video, it'd be really helpful to me if you would smash that like button, as well as subscribe to my channel. You'll get a lot of information on this club, as well as all the clubs that are coming up in release season 2025. We've got a ton of video that's going to be coming in January and February, and as we go into the brand new season. So I hope everybody enjoyed a really great holiday season. All the best to you and yours in 2025, and thanks a lot for watching.